that you're feeling, right, this is, when I use the word empathetic resonance, I'm trying to bring in a certain sense of energy of, yeah? So could you just say a bit more about...
Well, you know, we've now got SEAL targets, which is all about really teaching what used to be discrete things like emotional intelligence in, you know, in a very obvious way. And so I suppose the part of the project is to get students to consider, so we don't say, right, this is a very bad thing that happened to, you know, the black Africans, it should never have happened. We teach them the circumstances and then let them just decide for themselves. So it's going back to what we were saying last week about giving them a certain amount of creating an atmosphere, creating an environment of learning, but then allowing them to mull that over and consider and make their own judgments and then equate it with their own values. And what's really interesting, because the students, when they write their black spiritual songs after the project, they are asked to do so from the point of view of a black slave on the run. So they are having to empathise, they are having to imagine themselves as a runaway slave, and you know how terrifying that must be if you hear all the tracker dogs are coming after you and that kind of thing. And so yeah, it's getting them to put themselves in other people's situations, really. That's the idea.
Yeah, no, that, again, that feels to me really exciting. And again, if I send you both Mari and Dad's paper on empathetic validity, okay, because I think what it is you were just saying there would link very closely to what Marion is meaning by empathetic, not just empathy, but this idea of empathetic validity. How do we communicate with each other in a way that the meanings are shared? So that if you can show us perhaps some of the, and I know this is difficult, but the lyrics to the spiritual
The songs
of the students, and then even a little analysis of what it is that shows in the song that the students themselves have their empathy towards the runaway slave, for example. And I, as you were talking about the fear, you know, that sense of the dogs are being chased by them, I think there's a whole lot of emotional responses that you are helping the students to evoke in themselves through this process. Now that would again be very exciting, just to communicate this shared meaning of empathy in relation to those three projects.
The other thing I do, and it's a trick that I learnt of seeing when I was on teaching practice, I went and did some observation at Freeman College, and they had this young RE teacher, and he was dealing with a whole thing about black slavery, but also leading up to Martin Luther King, so still looking at the inequality issues and the whole history of oppression and second-class citizenship and all this sort of thing. And he told a story to the students, and he said, right, when you get home tonight, there's a spaceship that lands at the end of your road, and out of it comes little green men with zappers, and they start going into your houses and ransacking your houses and taking people from your houses and your home, and you have no chance of escaping. Anybody who does try to escape, then they'll zap, and you're taken to this spaceship, and the first thing that strikes you is a smell. And so he goes through this whole story, and of course what it is the black slave trade, but the students don't know that when they're telling them the story. And you go right through, but you know, they land on a foreign planet, and of course all the conditions, all the gore, you know, that's on the spaceship. Children are transfixed by that, naturally, but the whole thing about them being sold, and when you're taken to the alien town, and the whole thing about, you know, you don't have a choice about what you do and where you sleep and what happens to your sister, and you know, all those terrible things, and you can always hear the pin drop when you're telling the story to students, because I use it subsequently for this very project. And I say to the students, and there's also a law to say that you cannot complain about it. You are not allowed by law to complain about it. As a human being, what do? You need to express, you need to somehow translate what is happening to you as a human being. What do you do? And you can't talk about it. And they think, and usually somebody gets it. Or you can sing. You can sing about it because there's no law about singing. And that's what they did. And it's marvellous moments when they suddenly think, yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. And from that project, you then get them to compose their blues and all sorts of skills. You know, you teach them through the music and stuff. But the actual process, the actual understanding that the power of music, the power of song to evoke human emotion, whatever it is, whether it's negative or positive. And all students get the fact that that when they've had a bad day or they've had a good day, they can always go home, put on their iPod and tune into some music that always represents how they are feeling at that moment. So you're bringing all these sort of things in.
Okay, can I just suggest something now? That if I